Aliens evicted humanity. We turned space into a minefield. The Dauntless emerged from the fold like a drowning man breaking surface, violent, desperate, triumphant. Her hull bore the scars of the crossing, ablative plating scorched black, sensor arrays half-melted, coolant venting in crystalline plumes that caught the distant starlight. But she was through. 3 years of calculations, 2 failed prototypes, and 1 crew willing to bet their lives on mathematics that made the review board physically ill. Captain Akafer's voice crackled across the comm, hoarse with exhaustion and something approaching religious awe. Darkwater Reach. We're actually in Darkwater Reach. The bridge erupted. Cheers, tears, someone singing off-key. They'd done it. Punched through a route the Synarchy had declared gravitationally incoherent and unsuitable for stable transit. Humanity's first true FTL shortcut, carved through space that bent wrong and fought back. The Dauntless looked like she'd been through a war, all exposed struts and jury-rigged plating, but she was alive. Akafer was already composing the message home when the sensors screamed. High Justicar Vale regarded the intruder with the mild distaste one reserves for vermin in a sterile environment. The radiant arbitration hung in perfect geometric repose, her golden hull reflecting the nebular gases in mathematically pleasing patterns. The bridge was a study in controlled elegance. Holographic displays arranged in harmonious arcs, crew stations positioned according to optimal efficiency matrices. Everything clean, everything ordered, everything correct. The human vessel was none of these things. Analysis, Vale said, his secondary manipulators adjusting the drape of his judicial sash. Primitive fusion drive, crude gravitational shielding. Hull composition suggests industrial fabrication rather than molecular assembly. His sensor officer's tone carried the faint revulsion of someone describing a biological contaminant. They appear to have forced their way through the Reach. Vale's crest flattened in disapproval. The Reach had been interdicted for 17 cycles. The gravitational harmonics were unstable, the FTL nodes prone to catastrophic resonance. Only a species of profound ignorance or suicidal arrogance would attempt passage. They are hailing us, communications reported. Irrelevant. Vale gestured with one primary manipulator, a motion that had ended legal disputes across 3 sectors. This zone is restricted by Synarchy Decree 7441. Unauthorized presence constitutes violation of navigational law. Execute interdiction protocol. Without warning, Justicar. Vale's inner eyelids flickered, the Synarchy equivalent of a raised eyebrow. One does not negotiate with code violations. One corrects them. The radiant arbitration's primary lance was a masterwork of directed energy physics, capable of delivering 4.7 petawatts in a coherent beam. It was designed to disable rogue asteroids and enforce quarantine zones. Against the Dauntless, it was like using a surgical laser to swat an insect. The human ship didn't explode so much as cease. One moment a vessel, the next expanding plasma and tumbling debris. Clean, efficient, proper. Violation corrected, Vale announced. Prepare the standard interdiction notice for the species' homeworld. Inform them that further incursions will be met with escalating enforcement action. He turned back to his reports, already dismissing the incident. Somewhere in the debris field, a single emergency beacon continued transmitting. Its signal was crude, unencrypted, and by design impossible to jam. The Dauntless had been murdered, but she'd been built to die screaming. The emergency session of the Terran Defense Council convened in a bunker 3 kilometers beneath Geneva. Politicians, generals, scientists, all crammed into a room designed for half their number, all shouting at once. Commodore Rajni Sethi sat at the far end of the table and said nothing. She was a small woman, dark-skinned and gray-haired, with the kind of stillness that made people nervous. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. While the Secretary General demanded answers and the Joint Chiefs argued about response options, Rajni studied the data streaming across her tablet. The Dauntless's final transmission had been comprehensive. Sensor logs, tactical analysis, even the energy signature of the weapon that killed her. The crew had known they might not make it back. They'd made sure their death would be useful. Cannot possibly consider military action against a civilization that can do that. Appeasement is not an option. They destroyed a civilian research vessel. Technically, it was a military test platform. Commodore Sethi. The room fell silent. Admiral Kowalski, the only person present who'd actually commanded ships in combat, was looking at her. You've been quiet. Analysis. Rajni set down her tablet. When she spoke, her voice was soft, almost conversational. It made everyone lean forward to hear. They didn't jam our communications. They wanted us to see. See what? The Secretary General demanded. That we're irrelevant. Rajni pulled up the tactical display, highlighting the alien ship's position. They didn't maneuver for optimal firing solution, didn't raise shields, didn't even bother to hail us first. This wasn't combat, it was pest control. Someone started to object. Rajni continued as if they hadn't spoken. Their message called it an interdiction notice. Not a declaration of war, not even a warning. They're treating us like a zoning violation. She zoomed in on the weapon signature. This is a mining laser, industrial equipment. They used it because it was convenient, not because they needed to. So what do we do? Kowalski asked quietly. Rajni's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. We show them the difference between an eviction and a war. The room erupted again. Impossible, suicidal, we'd be obliterated. Rajni waited for the noise to die down. Then she said, very quietly, I spent 20 years hunting submarines in the Arctic. Do you know what the ocean and space have in common? No one answered. They're both dark, they're both hostile, and they're both full of things that will kill you if you make a mistake. She stood, gathering her tablet. The Synarchy has better ships, faster engines, stronger shields. They think that makes them apex predators. She looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes in turn. They've never fought prey that hunts back. The Admiralty briefing room was designed to project confidence. Polished wood, historical battle flags, a view of the orbital defense platforms through reinforced windows. Rajni ignored all of it. She'd had the lights dimmed and the central holotank activated, transforming the space into something that resembled a submarine's combat information center. Appropriate, given what she was about to propose. We cannot win a fleet engagement. She said it flatly, without preamble, as the assembled officers took their seats. Their ships are faster, their shields are stronger, and their weapons have longer range. In a stand-up fight, we lose. Badly. Admiral Kowalski leaned back in his chair. Then, why are we here, Commodore? Because we're not going to fight them in a stand-up fight. Rajni activated the holotank. Darkwater Reach materialized in miniature, a roiling mass of gravitational eddies, unstable FTL nodes, and nebular interference. We're going to fight them in the dark. She highlighted a section of the Reach where the gravitational turbulence was particularly severe. This region is a navigational nightmare. Sensors are unreliable. FTL jumps are dangerous. The Synarchy interdicted it because even their technology struggles here. A thin smile. But we've already proven we can navigate it. Barely. Badly. But we can do it. You want to lure them into a trap, someone said. I want to make the water toxic. Rajni pulled up a series of schematics. We don't need to rule space. We just need to make it too expensive for them to rule us. The first schematic showed an asteroid mining drone, retrofitted with stealth plating and a nuclear warhead. Mines. Thousands of them. We seed the Reach with them, using the gravitational turbulence to mask their signatures. They have shields, an engineer objected. They do. Rajni zoomed in on the warhead design. These aren't designed to penetrate shields. They're designed to create shaped gravitational pulses. The Synarchy ships are built for stable space. Their hulls are optimized for efficiency, not structural integrity. Hit them with enough gravitational shear and they'll tear themselves apart. She moved to the next schematic, a tungsten rod with an engine attached. Relativistic kill vehicles. We accelerate them to 0.3 C and let physics do the rest. Too small to target easily, too fast to dodge, and carrying enough kinetic energy to punch through anything. That's a war crime, someone muttered. Only if we use them on planets. Rajni's voice was perfectly level. Against ships, they're just very fast bullets. The final schematic showed a buoy covered in emitters, screamers. They mimic capital ship drive signatures. We scatter them throughout the reach. When the Synarchy comes looking for us, they'll be shooting at ghosts. Kowalski studied the display for a long moment. This is submarine doctrine. Yes. In space. Yes. You want to turn Darkwater Reach into a killing field. I want to turn it into a place they're afraid to go. Rajni met his eyes. The Synarchy thinks they're the apex predators. We need to teach them that there are worse things than them in the dark. The construction began immediately. Humanity had always been good at building things quickly when survival was on the line. Orbital foundries that had been producing civilian infrastructure were retooled overnight. Asteroid mining operations shifted from resource extraction to weapons fabrication. Every available ship, from military frigates to civilian haulers, was pressed into service. The mines were crewed by Synarchy standards. Human engineers didn't have access to molecular assembly or exotic matter, but they were effective. Each one was a masterwork of improvisation. Stealth plating scavenged from reconnaissance drones, gravitational sensors pulled from survey satellites, and warheads that had been designed to crack asteroids, not ships. Will they work? The lead engineer asked Rajni during an inspection tour. She studied the mine, noting the exposed wiring and hand-welded seams. They don't need to be elegant, they just need to be lethal. The RKVs were even simpler, tungsten rods pulled from orbital construction projects, fitted with engines that could accelerate them to a fraction of light speed. No guidance systems at those velocities. You didn't need to be accurate. You just needed to be in the general vicinity of your target. It's like throwing rocks, one of the weapons designers said, half apologetic. Rocks that hit with the force of nuclear weapons, Rajni replied. I'll take it. The screamers were the most complex component, requiring careful calibration to mimic Synarchy drive signatures. Rajni spent hours with the sensor specialists, fine-tuning the emissions until they could fool even human detection systems. How many do we need? They asked. Enough that they can't tell what's real. She pulled up a deployment map. I want them to see a fleet. I want them to waste ammunition on empty space. I want them confused, frustrated, and off balance. Within 3 weeks, the fleet was ready. 12 frigates, 30 haulers converted to mine layers, and enough ordnance to turn Darkwater Reach into a graveyard. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't sophisticated. But it was human, improvised, adaptable, and absolutely ruthless. Rajni stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Calcutta, and watched the fleet assemble. They looked like a scrapyard armada compared to the sleek Synarchy vessels, but submarines had never been pretty either. Deploy the lure, she ordered. A single drone ship, unmanned and broadcasting on every frequency, jumped into the Reach. Its message was simple, repeated in every language humanity had ever spoken. Darkwater Reach is human territory. Leave now or be removed. It was arrogant, provocative, designed to insult. The Synarchy, Rajni knew, did not tolerate insults. High Justicar Vale's replacement, High Justicar Thuron, was younger and considerably more aggressive. When the human provocation arrived, he didn't convene a committee or file a report. he assembled a task force. 3 cruisers, 1 capital ship, enough firepower to sterilize a small moon. These creatures require a lesson in proportional response, Thuron announced to his officers. We will enter their territory, destroy their vessels, and establish a permanent interdiction station. The Synarchy does not negotiate with vermin. The task force entered Darkwater Reach in perfect formation, shields at maximum, weapons hot. Their sensors immediately lit up with contacts, dozens of them, scattered throughout the region. Capital ships, cruisers, even what appeared to be a carrier group. Impressive, Thuron's tactical officer noted. They've assembled a significant fleet. Irrelevant. Target the largest concentration and open fire. The radiant arbitration II unleashed a barrage that would have vaporized a small asteroid. The target exploded in a satisfying fireball. Then the sensors recalibrated. No debris, no wreckage, just a buoy still broadcasting its false signature even as it tumbled through space. Decoys, the tactical officer said, his voice tight. Find the real ships, Thuron ordered, now. They fired again, and again. Each time the target dissolved into nothing, a ghost, a trick of sensors and gravitational interference. The Reach was full of them, dozens of false signatures that appeared and disappeared like phantoms. This is a waste of ammunition, someone muttered. That's when the mines activated. The first mine detonated 300 meters from the lead cruiser's port side. The warhead was small by naval standards, barely 5 megatons, but it wasn't designed to penetrate the shields. It was designed to warp them. The shaped nuclear charge created a gravitational pulse that rippled through local spacetime like a stone thrown into a pond. The cruiser's shields, optimized for deflecting energy weapons and kinetic impacts, had no defense against gravitational shear. The pulse bent them, twisted them, and for a fraction of a second, inverted them. The cruiser's hull, designed for the perfect vacuum of stable space, crumpled like aluminum foil. Damage report, Thuron shouted. Hull breach on the Radiant Justice, they're venting atmosphere. Another mine detonated. Then another. The Reach lit up with nuclear fire, each explosion carefully positioned to maximize gravitational interference. The Synarchy ships, built for elegance and efficiency, began to tear themselves apart under stresses they'd never been designed to withstand. Return fire, target the source of. There is no source, Justicar. The weapons are autonomous, scattered throughout the region. Thuron's crest flattened in fury. Then we leave, plot a jump to. The RKVs arrived. Rajni watched the tactical display with the calm focus of a chess grandmaster, watching her opponent realize they'd been in checkmate for the last 3 moves. RKV impact in 5 seconds, her weapons officer reported. The relativistic kill vehicles were invisible to the Synarchy sensors until the moment they hit. Too small, too fast, too simple. Just tungsten rods accelerated to 0.3 C, carrying enough kinetic energy to punch through shields, armor, and anything else in their path. The first RKV hit the Radiant Justice amidships. The cruiser didn't explode, it simply ceased to exist in that location, replaced by a column of superheated plasma that vented through both sides of the hull. The ship broke in half, each section tumbling away in different directions. The second RKV missed its target by 300 meters. At relativistic speeds, even near misses were catastrophic. The kinetic shockwave shattered the cruiser's sensor arrays and cracked its primary reactor containment. It died slowly, bleeding radiation and atmosphere. The third RKV hit the capital ship's forward shield emitter. The shield collapsed, and the ship's own gravitational field began tearing it apart from the inside. They're trying to jump, Rajni's sensor officer reported. Let them. Thuron's bridge was chaos. Alarms screaming, crew shouting, displays flickering as power systems failed. The capital ship Radiant Sovereignty was dying, and he knew it. Emergency jump. Any vector, just get us out of. Justicar, the FTL harmonics are unstable. The local node is. I don't care, jump. The Radiant Sovereignty engaged her FTL drive, desperately trying to claw her way out of the killing field. But Rajni had spent 3 weeks mapping the Reach's gravitational eddies, identifying the nodes that were most prone to catastrophic resonance. The capital ship's mass profile was too large, the node was too unstable, and the harmonics were wrong. The ship folded into FTL space and immediately began to come apart. Not explosively, that would have been merciful. Instead, she stretched, her forward sections accelerating while her aft sections lagged behind, until the structural stress exceeded the hull's tolerance. The Radiant Sovereignty tore herself in half trying to escape. Rajni watched the last Synarchy ship die and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just the cold certainty that the message had been sent. Cease fire, she ordered. Begin salvage operations. I want every piece of their technology cataloged and analyzed. We're not going to reverse engineer their ships, someone asked. No, Rajni's voice was flat. We're going to learn how to break them better. She turned to her communications officer. Prepare a message for Synarchy High Command. Tight beam, maximum priority. I'll record it personally. The debris field that had been a Synarchy task force drifted through Darkwater Reach like golden snow. Human salvage teams moved through the wreckage with methodical efficiency, cutting away hull sections, extracting intact technology, mapping the failure points where gravitational shear and kinetic impacts had done their work. Rajni stood on the observation deck of the Calcutta, watching the salvage operations with the same calm focus she'd brought to the battle. Around her, the bridge crew worked in quiet competence, already planning the next phase of operations. Commodore, her communications officer said, the recording studio is ready. Rajni nodded and made her way to the small compartment that had been set up for the transmission. No fancy backdrop, no dramatic lighting. Just her, a camera, and the cold certainty of what needed to be said. She sat down, adjusted her uniform, and nodded to the technician. The recording began. This message is directed to the Synarchy High Command. Rajni's voice was soft, almost conversational, the kind of tone you'd use to discuss weather or logistics. I am Commodore Rajni Sethi, Terran Defense Force. I am speaking to you from Darkwater Reach, which you recently attempted to interdict. She paused, letting that sink in. Attempted. Your task force has been destroyed. 3 cruisers and 1 capital ship. Total casualties, approximately 4,000 personnel. We have recovered your dead where possible and will return them to you, along with the wreckage of your vessels. Another pause. Her expression remained perfectly neutral. I want to be very clear about what happened here. This was not a battle. This was a demonstration. You destroyed the Dauntless because you believed we were irrelevant. You sent a task force because you believed we were weak. You were wrong on both counts. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes fixed on the camera. Darkwater Reach is now human territory. We have mapped the FTL harmonics. We have seeded the region with autonomous weapons platforms. We have established permanent monitoring stations. Any Synarchy vessel that enters this space without authorization will be destroyed. Not interdicted, not warned, destroyed. Her voice remained soft, but something cold crept into it. I understand that your civilization values order and efficiency. So let me be efficient. The cost of removing us from this region exceeds the value of the region itself. You can attempt another assault, but we will make you pay for every meter of space in blood and ships. We will turn your trade routes into graveyards. We will seed your safe passages with the same gravitational anomalies that destroyed your capital ship. She sat back, her expression softening slightly. Or you can accept that humanity has claimed this territory and leave us alone. We have no interest in your empire. We have no desire for conquest. We simply want to be left in peace to explore our own space." A long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was almost gentle. "You treated us like vermin, like a code violation to be corrected. That was your mistake. We are not vermin. We are apex predators who have learned to hunt in the dark. And now you know what it costs to corner us." She stood, smoothing her uniform. "This is the only warning you will receive. Darkwater Reach is ours. Stay out." The recording ended. The message reached Synarchy High Command 3 days later. It was reviewed by a committee of high justicars, analyzed by military strategists, and debated by the Council of Hierarchs. The debate lasted 6 hours. The conclusion was unanimous. High Hierarch Valen, the most senior member of the council, delivered the final assessment. "The humans have demonstrated asymmetric warfare capabilities that exceed our projections. Their willingness to operate in unstable space gives them a tactical advantage we cannot easily counter. The cost of pacifying Darkwater Reach would require a fleet commitment that is inadvisable." "They destroyed a capital ship," someone objected. "They destroyed a capital ship using weapons that cost a fraction of what the ship was worth," Valen corrected. "And they did it in an environment where our technological advantages are minimized. This is not a species we can casually suppress. So we do nothing. We reclassify." Valen pulled up a star chart highlighting Darkwater Reach. "The region is now designated as a quarantined anomaly, gravitationally unstable, prone to catastrophic FTL failures, inhabited by a hostile indigenous species. We establish a buffer zone, we monitor their expansion, and we avoid close quarters entanglement." It was, in every practical sense, a surrender. But the Synarchy had built an empire on pragmatism, not pride. The official decree went out the next day. Darkwater Reach and surrounding systems are hereby classified as Restricted Zone 7441 Alpha. All Synarchy vessels are prohibited from entering without explicit High Command authorization. Indigenous species are to be considered hostile and technologically unpredictable. Avoid close quarters entanglement. Rajni received the Synarchy's response 3 weeks later. She read it twice, then filed it away without comment. She stood on the observation deck of the Calcutta, watching the stars. Darkwater Reach stretched out before her, no longer a navigational hazard but a border. Humanity's first true territorial claim in a galaxy full of older, stronger civilizations. They were still technologically inferior, still outnumbered, still vulnerable. But they'd carved out a space where they were the apex predators, where the darkness was their ally, not their enemy, where anyone who came hunting would learn the same lesson the Synarchy had learned. Admiral Kowalski joined her at the window. "The politicians are calling it a victory." "It's not a victory," Rajni said quietly. "It's a deterrent." "What's the difference?" "A victory means you've won. A deterrent means you've made the cost of fighting you higher than the cost of leaving you alone." She gestured at the Reach. "We didn't beat the Synarchy. We just convinced them we're too sharp to swallow." Kowalski was quiet for a moment. "Do you think they'll come back?" "Eventually, when they've figured out how to counter our tactics or when they decide the cost is worth it." Rajni's expression didn't change. "But by then we'll have figured out something new. That's what we do. We adapt." She turned away from the window, already thinking about the next phase. Expanding the monitoring network, refining the weapons platforms, training new crews in submarine doctrine. Humanity had proven it could fight in the dark. Now it needed to prove it could win in the dark. "Get me the engineering teams," she said. "I want to talk about improving the RKV guidance systems." Kowalski smiled slightly. "You're not going to rest on this, are you?" "Rest is for species that can afford to be complacent." Rajni headed for the bridge, her voice carrying back over her shoulder. "We're not there yet." In the depths of Darkwater Reach, the autonomous weapons platforms continued their silent vigil. Mines drifted through gravitational eddies, waiting. Screamers broadcast their false signatures, creating a ghost fleet that would never sleep. And somewhere in the darkness, a new generation of RKVs was being assembled, faster and more accurate than the last. The Synarchy had learned to avoid close-quarters entanglement. Humanity had learned that sometimes, the best way to survive in a hostile galaxy wasn't to be the strongest. It was to be the most dangerous thing in the dark. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next adventure.